Hey there, all you ghouls and goblins. Radio 85.9 proudly presents Horror Zoid with your hosts, Stevie Scares and Natalie Nightmare, talking all things horror from the 80s, 90s, and today. Today's episode is brought to you by Larry's Limbs. Did you survive a jigsaw trap, but just barely? Come on down to Larry's Limbs. We'll get you fixed up. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Horror Zoid. I'm Stevie Scares.
And I'm Natalie Nightmare.
And today it is our breakdown of the Saw film franchise.
Fuck
1
yeah.
through 9. And let's not forget, we got a 10th one on the way next year. It's 2022 that we're recording this episode. 2023, we're scheduled to get Saw X.
Yeah.
Can't fucking wait. But as you heard in our inaugural episode, Natalie's fifth favorite movie is Saw, and it prompted us to really talk in depth about the Saw franchise and its origins with James Wan and Leigh Whannell. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized this is the franchise we want to start with.
Yeah.
This is where we want to do our first franchise breakdown and talk about the films, the stories, the plots, and of course, the traps.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it because I think we have a lot of ground to cover. Literally, there's 9 movies,
Right.
and and then there's a short film that started it all. So let's start there.
Yeah.
In 2003, two guys, James Wan and Leigh Whannell, got together. Two Australian
Was
blokes.
Leigh Whannell with him in the beginning? Or
Yes.
Was it just James?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he plays the original character in the short. That's it. That was his acting debut.
That's right.
So Leigh Whannell and James Wan start this whole thing off. These two Aussie blokes who get together and make we're gonna make a little fun horror movie about people who chop their legs off.
Yay!
That's probably not how the conversation went, by the way. But yeah, so they get together. They make this short film called Saw. And it's a pitch, really. It's that was the purpose, is they wanted to pitch this movie that they wanted to make on a bigger scale, but they started with this short film. It's how a lot of these, honestly, how the filmmakers back then really did it. They would make
Right.
these short films that served as a pitch for the full thing, and that's what James and Leigh did. And they shopped it around, and they got some producers at Lionsgate interested, and gave the birth of Twisted Pictures. And some of those producers, but Saw was then greenlit and came out with a full feature film in 2004, also directed by James Wan, written by him and Leigh Whannell.
Yep. Two of my favorite people. They've
Yeah.
come a long way. I know there's been a lot of opportunities open for them. Obviously, James Wan has not just stuck to horror.
Yeah, he's branched out. He's done Fast and the Furious movie. He's done Aquaman.
Yeah, which I've still never seen, but I've heard it did really fucking good. So
Yeah.
you know.
I've kind of checked out on DC for a while. I might check back in.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, James Wan has definitely experienced some success. Leigh Whannell has also experienced some success. He started out as a writer and an actor. And he started his career mainly, he's worked with James Wan, and he's only recently started to branch out on his own. But
Right.
they together they created such films as the Saw franchise. They did a movie called Dead Silence that Natalie and I absolutely love, and we're going
Love that
to.
movie.
It's one of our absolute favorites. I love Dead Silence with so much passion. It's one of my. It's so good.
Honestly, by the end of October, probably, we will probably have done our first episode just based off of the works of, I guess we can title it, because we really just want to talk about James Wan and Leigh Whannell's movies. But obviously, Saw is the big one that really kicked it off for them and started a fucking phenomenon.
Right. And yeah, so that's where it started. 2003 was the short film. It was quickly greenlit, and it became a full-length feature film called Saw, which debuted in 2004.
Have you ever seen Saw?
Yeah, Mose and I see Saw all the time. And then now not only did this start the Saw franchise, but it really started a phenomenon of what people have come to call torture porn. And torture porn is this whole new genre of film in the last 20 years, where it is primarily based on just watching people endure the most amount of punishment and gore and blood and brutality that you possibly can.
Gore, more gore.
Right. And, you can argue that, Herschel Gordon Lewis, started back in the day with 2000 Maniacs, and Wizard of Gore and all that. But these new filmmakers like James Wan, Lee Wanell. We saw Eli Roth with Hostel.
Right.
We saw the adaptation of Jack Ketchum's Girl Next Door. So there's been a lot of those torture porn-esque movies that have been out there, but James Wan and Lee Wanell really kicked it into the mainstream.
Yeah.
And we now we have it's got a whole new legacy with these two. And so yeah, we wanted to kind of cover what Saw really started before we get into the nitty-gritty of the first film. But the first film focuses on it opens up and we have two men, Dr. Lawrence Gordon, played by Cary Ells, and we have Adam Stanheight, played by Lee Wanell. And they wake up in what a literal shithole. It is a bathroom, a derelict bathroom that has definitely seen better days, and they are chained to pipes. And the object is they wake up and they have these tapes. They find these tapes that tell them that they're in this trap because they have proven they don't have a respect. I would like to play a game. I want to play a game.
You do that much better.
But they wake up and they play these tapes and they realize that they are here because they are told they don't appreciate their lives. They don't appreciate the opportunities they've been given. And when they come out of this, if they survive, they will have a new appreciation for this.
Yes. Really fucked up concept that I just remember sitting in movie theaters and just knew it was something I was going to obsess over for a long time. The first movie, we wouldn't call it the torture porn. It was more into the sequels where it got really intense and it was kind of just what can be the next big thing. And I think
it was kind of a game of one-upsmanship. Everybody wanted to see how they could top the last guy, because it's like, yes, this was tame by the time we really entered the big thing with the torture porn movies. Like, we'll get even further in it with, Eli Roth ended up doing Green Inferno, which is a love letter to Cannibal Holocaust, obviously. And then we've got the I Spit on Your Grave remakes and sequels and things like that. Yeah. So all those torture porn movies, Saw seems tame in comparison because, like I said, it became a game of one-upsmanship and who can be sicker than the last person. Because Saw was 2004, Hostel was 2005, and it was like Eli Roth looked at what James Wan and Lee Wanell were doing, and he said, "How can I top that?"
Yeah.
And that's the game just continued from there.
Yeah, it was. I'm not a huge fan of Hostel.
No,
and I know that's not what we're talking about right now, but
but it is in the discussion though.
It is in the discussion, and I don't like Hostel for a lot of reasons, but there's something with Saul, even with the later movies, with some of the traps and stuff that they do, and it's funny to say, him cutting his foot off in the first movie is not that intense, but it's like when it really is
one of the most intense scenes.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's a movie that gives me a lot of frisson. I get
if you follow us on TikTok, you know that we do consider that one of the best endings in cinematic history.
It is. I don't think anything will beat it for me. It's my favorite plot twist of all time.
Oh, it is
the
no disrespect to M. Night Shyamalan,
right?
But yeah, the James Wan Lee Wanell Saw 2004 plot twist. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, it's much better to me than I See Dead People.
And we're gonna get a spoiler alert out there right now because we're gonna be talking spoilers this whole time.
I mean, I feel like if you're listening to us, you've probably seen all of the Saw movies in the franchise, but. If not, there is a spoiler warning because Saw is all about twists.
Right. We're going to go over all of the twists.
And the first movie, I think, is my favorite twist, again. And I recently posted that on TikTok, and a lot of people fucking ate that shit up. That's an easy way to get views, apparently. Record your fucking TV. But I think it's because everyone likes scrolling and they see, that little clip of a movie that they love. And the part when Adam is, screaming at the door and it just rolls into the credits is beautiful. But it's the fact that you get slapped in the face with a plot and then you get all these fast cuts, that Saw really, I feel like, brought into movies, that kind of style. The weird shaky cam and the spinny cam. But you get all of these shots, for everything in the movie leading up to the end and how it all ties together. And no one saw it coming.
Yeah, because as I mentioned, Basically, when we open the movie, it's these two men chained to these pipes. But also in the room is the body of a dead man who blew his brains out with a gun, and we have the gun in his hand. And the idea is that the reason these two are chained to the pipes is because in this room, a poison is pumping into the room. It's infecting them. There is an antidote that they're told. But the guy in the middle of the floor couldn't find the antidote, shot himself. Yeah, no,
Right.
that whole
It's like
chestnut.
It's like you hear his trap, and it's almost like I know he plays games, but it's almost like they're put in a room where there was already a trap happening, and they were like, well, that one didn't fucking work, so round 2,
Exactly.
throw these guys in there.
Right.
So they're just kind of sitting in there with the leftovers of the game before them, literally.
Yeah, and which becomes a theme throughout the whole series, as we'll
Yeah.
find out. But a subplot to the movie, of course, is there is a detective played by Danny Glover. His name is Detective Tapp, and he obsesses about this killer. And we find out that the killer he is chasing is the person who supposedly locked Dr. Gordon, played by Carrie Ells, and Adam in this shithole. And we find out that his name is, he's known as the Jigsaw Killer. And the reason Carrie Ells' character, Dr. Gordon, knows about this is because he was interviewed as a suspect to potentially be Jigsaw.
Yes.
So Dr. Gordon is interviewed, and he reveals all this to Adam, and he, they don't trust each other. And as more information comes out, we find out that Dr. Gordon is not Jigsaw because he's in the trap. And we kind of meet some other victims along the way. A young woman named Amanda, who will become very vital to the series. She is a previous victim, the only victim to survive up to this point. And then Dr. Gordon, once he's relieved, we meet Amanda, and then Detective Tapp continues his investigation. Throughout this process, Detective Tapp's partner, played by Ken Leung, is basically killed in a jigsaw trap of his own, a little makeshift mini one, as they're chasing the suspect.
Yeah. Because
Very intense scene.
You gotta have your place booby trapped. Like, if you're gonna be this, brainiac. I don't want to say serial killer, because everyone argues the fact that Jigsaw never actually kills people,
It's
which
true.
I'm gonna argue that he does, because of some of the traps. Like, he literally is like, Zepp, you have to kill a mother and daughter. Like, bro, that's you killing them. Like,
Right. That's not a trap.
That's
you-
assistance to murder.
Right. That's I don't think that counts.
but-
Shame on you, Jigsaw.
But, I think it's, to him, he doesn't think of it that way. It's just part of his game.
Right.
He's not trying to kill people.
Right, and that's what we learned
But-
along the way. Is one of the first victims was a guy who was suicidal.
Yes.
Jigsaw leaves him a tape as Tapp is investigating the crime scene, and we see that this guy, because he wanted to commit suicide, he again was deemed as somebody who doesn't respect and appreciate his life, obviously, and now he must learn to appreciate it by being in this trap, which his was barbed wire.
Yeah.
He gets cut on all this barbed wire and stuck, and he can't make it through the trap, and he ultimately dies from his wounds.
Bleeding out, yeah.
Right, and that sets the tone for all of the other jigsaw traps in the movie. So as we go along, Detective Tapp is obsessed. We find out that one of the orderlies that works with Dr. Gordon in the hospital, a man known as Zepp.
His name is John.
Zepp, who is a weird orderly played by Michael Emerson, traps Dr. Gordon's family, holds him at gunpoint. And we get this huge climax where Adam and Dr. Gordon are debating on what to do. They are provided a cell phone where Dr. Gordon talks to his family, and then there's a big confrontation where Detective Tapp finds Zepp. They end up in a shootout. Dr. Gordon hears the shootout and thinks his family's in danger, and now has to go into this crazy mode where he has to get out by any means necessary. Come into play. There are two hacksaws that Adam found in a toilet in the room. Dr. Gordon gets one. They've tried to saw off the chains, and they realize he doesn't want us to saw through our chains.
He wants us to saw through our feet.
And that's when the most crazy fucking climax in the history of film happens,
Right.
because fucking Zepp cannot kill the family because Detective Tapp interferes. They scuffle. Detective Tapp ends up dead. Zepp goes into the bathroom where Gordon has his first solution was let's kill Adam because he takes the gun from the dead body, shoots Adam. Adam's down. Zepp comes in to try to kill Gordon. Adam gets up, bashes fucking Zepp in the head with the toilet, the back of the toilet.
Yeah.
And then Gordon is left to saw his fucking leg off to get out of the fucking room. And Adam is just left watching like, what the fuck is happening?
And the thing is like, I'm laughing because you sum it up brilliantly, but also
manically, because it is a fucking manic ending. Well,
you are neurodivergent as fuck, but the fact that with Dr. Gordon through the whole movie in this room, they know they have a countdown. It's you have to do this by 12. He's supposed to kill Adam by 12 o'clock, but you have a countdown. You know that they're in here for hours trying to figure things out, and there's clues that they find, and the more that they learn about each other. But
because there's the whole detail that Gordon was cheating on his wife, and Adam was hired to take pictures of him as he's cheating on his wife.
Yeah, because Adam doesn't have any friends. He's just this my camera doesn't lie, photographer who lives in a shithole apartment in the city. And, they all have their flaws. I don't really think putting someone who takes pictures of other people in a Jigsaw trap is really especially
when he was hired by Jigsaw, clearly So yeah. So so we get to the end of the film. Gordon sawed his leg off. Adam is they're dying as he's been shot, and he just had to bash a guy's brains in. And then he plays the final tape, and it's Zepp's tape, and he says, "Hello, Zepp," and takes him through the trap. And then all of a sudden, as in the middle of the fucking room, the dead guy stands up.
Oh, it's such
fucking
a good scene.
Stands up like
the
it's
way
nothing.
Lee Whannell transitions from this movie to not the best delivery on his lines to just when everything goes fucking south. And
at the end of the movie, he understands the assignment.
Yeah, Lee Whannell, and he is a scream king, and I'm gonna stand by that, especially since he's Specs in Insidious. But the fact that the way he just turns and looks at this guy that's getting up, and this guy fucking stands up, and he stretches, and he reaches up, and he pulls this bullet wound prosthetic off of his head, just kind of groans. And then, Adam tries to lift the gun to shoot him, but the dead guy, so-and-so, fucking electrocutes him again, because why not have that in the cuff on their leg?
And we find out that this dead guy who stood up in the middle of the room, his name's John Kramer. He was a patient of Dr. Gordon suffering from cancer. And as he discovered that he had cancer, he realize how to appreciate his life, and we find out more about that as the series goes on. And he wants to teach people the same appreciation for life, because as he's dying with cancer, there are people out there living lives and don't understand the gift that they're given. So his way of making them Dr. Gordon,
a kind of shitty guy. He's treating John Kramer like a number. There's the part in the movie where he's patient number, blah, blah, blah.
Right. And then
that's when you get Zepp go, his name is John.
His name is John.
And it's so he takes away the human aspect of his patients. He's just a doctor there to get money and fuck bitches on the side.
And again, we also find out that's a theme with John, that he doesn't appreciate that as we explore the later movies.
Right.
But yeah, so the big reveal at the end is John Kramer, this cancer patient of Dr. Gordon, set up this trap and all of these traps. And he is the infamous Jigsaw killer. And he becomes the character who becomes the through line throughout the entire film series. He is the main villain, the main antagonist. Throughout everything.
Tobin Bell.
And he's played by Tobin Bell, who after this became a horror icon, much like Robert Englund did by playing Freddy Krueger. Kane Hodder became by playing Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
All of these guys who became horror icons by being the antagonist, Tobin Bell just joined that lineage.
Yeah.
And then we pick up in Saw 2. We are introduced to the character of Detective Eric Matthews.
Oh, Eric.
Eric Matthews is played by Donnie Wahlberg, and he's an asshole. And if you're wondering why is Donnie Wahlberg so good at playing assholes, well, he's kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
So Detective Eric Matthews picks up the mantle of Detective Tapp, who we said passed away in the previous movie. There's no mention of Dr. Lawrence Gordon whatsoever. And honestly, for that matter, there's no reference to Adam in this one, in Saw 2. We are totally introduced to a new character with Eric Matthews. We are also introduced to Lieutenant Rigg, who becomes a big character in the next couple movies. And Detective Carrie. I forget her last name, but her name's Carrie.
Carrie, that's all I remember.
Carrie, yeah, she was actually in the first movie in a very small role with Detective Tapp and his partner. She is now working closely with Eric Matthews since she's the most tenured on the case. So they're still chasing Jigsaw. The movie opens Jigsaw sending messages to Eric Matthews, to Detective Matthews, who we find has a very dysfunctional home life and not the best relationship with his son. So he
Daniel, right?
Daniel. It is Daniel, yeah. Daniel! Yeah, it's yeah.
That's the only reason I remember.
It's the only reason
a lot of
anybody
screaming
remembers.
of that fucking name in the movie.
He screams. Yeah, you'll find out he screams that name a lot.
Yeah.
So Matthews, Detective Matthews, receives all these clues. He and his crew are led to a warehouse that is the location of the Jigsaw killer. And there they are brought face to face with John Kramer, who we saw at the end of the last movie. Now, since the end of the last movie, he's in worse condition.
Yeah.
He's hooked up to machines that are keeping him alive.
Yeah,
he's
got
in a wheelchair.
Respirator, IV kind of thing
he's
going
not
on.
in good
Yeah.
shape. But he tells Eric he wants to play one last game. And that game, and Eric asks, what do you want to do? He's like, all you have to do is sit here and talk to me.
Yep.
Well, as he's telling him all you have to do is talk to me, the other officers discover a set of computer monitors that are showing another game in progress. So John, a.k.a. the Jigsaw Killer, has started another game. And through these security cameras, Eric and the other detectives see that there's a room full of people just waking up. And that is where we join their story. And in this room, we see some familiar faces. We see Detective Matthew's son, Daniel. We also see victim from the first movie, Amanda.
Oh, wow.
She is now in her second trap to date, along with some newcomers who we learn along the way.
Yes.
But they wake up in this trap, and Amanda automatically knows what's going on because she's been through the
freaks
trap
out,
before.
Starts looking around, looking for shit, telling people they need to follow the fucking rules.
Yeah. You have to follow the fucking rules.
Yeah, and it's I can't even think of exactly how many people are in this room, but there's a big safe in the middle, and there's no keys anywhere, but then there's one little key and it says don't use on the front door.
Right. But they
And
of course
they're
they
like,
try to use it on the door.
Fuck that, I'm gonna try it. And you get the revolver trap where they turn it and the gun on the other side goes off and blows through the dude's head who's looking through the peephole.
Guy doesn't even get through the first room.
No.
It's like he doesn't even make it through the first boss.
No.
What a fucking punk.
What an asshole.
So we see this. So Detective Matthews is he's totally going alpha male Cro-Magnon on John Kramer. He's throwing shit around
God,
John's.
He's awful. Like throwing shit off of his desk. Like, and I kind of.
He's totally doing an alpha male, and he should have just gone up to John. He's like, look, you fucking beta. Look, you're gonna tell me what's my fucking son doing in the trap, you fucking beta.
Right.
And like John would have just been like,
well, there's
what's a beta?
And there's the part even when he's like breaking all of his shit, and John just kind of looks at him. He's like, "Does that make you feel better?"
Right.
And
he
it's
just
like,
totally calls him out.
He's kind of mocking him because he's like, "Fuck all your papers and your notes and your trash, and your bullshit." But
all John keeps saying is like, "I just want you to talk to me.
want you to
I just
talk
want
to
you
me."
to sit
but
here."
he's too hot-headed and
he says, "If you just sit
much
here
of
and
an
talk
ass.
to me, I guarantee you." He literally guarantees his son will be alive. His
In a
son will
safe
survive
place.
in a safe place. So he tells Eric this, and Eric just can't keep his cool.
No.
So we, the whole movie, Saw 2, we are treated to the scenes of Detective Matthews interrogating John, and the trap as we follow these people
the video feed of the people in the
video
house.
feed of the people.
Yes.
And of course it's Amanda and John, Eric's son Daniel, who are with all these complete strangers. So as we go along, we find out that the people in the trap with Daniel and Amanda have numbers on the back of their neck. And we don't know what the numbers are, but we are told they will play a part in the end of the film.
Yes.
And you're met with these different characters. We find out that the common bond between all of these characters is they were all in jail. They've all done time. They've all been either in prison or even just like a weekend in county lockup. In the case of Daniel, Eric's son, who is kind of a mischievous teen.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, oh, he's got juvie written all over him, I
Right.
think is one of the lines.
Exactly.
And, as the movie goes on and things are progressing, there's a clue somewhere about X marks the spot. I think it's the second time he's done that in a Saw movie.
Yeah.
But there's the picture frame with the glass. I think it's broken. And it's the picture of Daniel and his dad. And they all realize they're all in jail because of his dad.
Right. You find out the common denominator, not just that they've all done time, but they all had the same arresting officer, and it was it was Officer Eric Matthews before he became a detective.
Who liked to plant drugs.
Right.
To get
And
people.
all of these people did not necessarily deserve to be in cuffs because of Eric Matthews.
Right.
So it's funny now Daniel finds himself locked in a house with all of these people his dad is arrested. And we find out that the reason why we need combinations, why everybody needs to get out of this trap is because they, again, like in the first movie, a poison is being injected into the room.
Right.
So this one we continue to follow. And then at the end of the film, Eric just loses his cool with John, roughs him up, says, take me to where Adam... Or not Adam. I love Lee Wanell. He's Adam, and he's the best. But take me to where Daniel is. So he beats him up, and John says, "Fine, I'll take you there." They go to the spot, and they are led there. Meanwhile, after Eric and John get to this location where the game was going on, a timer goes off in John's warehouse where the other officers are still watching the game, and as it goes off, a safe literally rises up out of the ground, and Daniel is in there breathing fine. Yes. We get to the
Clicks open, he's just in there with like an oxygen mask on,
and he's perfectly fine. Meanwhile, Eric is now finding himself leading. He's going through the house, and we see the house, and we see the dead bodies of all the people who did not survive the trap.
Yep.
And we get to the end, and Eric finds the bathroom from the first movie, the shithole. Only he is taken out as he gets there. And when he awakens, he realizes he's been trapped. His foot is now chained to the pipes from the shithole in the first movie. And who is standing there waiting to close the door? It's not John. Because remember, he fucked up John, beat him up.
Yep.
It is Amanda.
Yeah.
And Amanda, we find out, is an apprentice of John Kramer's.
Yep.
And the reason she was in the trap in the first place is she was a plant by John.
To keep Daniel safe. So
the twist ending here is that Amanda was in on it the whole time. Now she's trapped Eric for wrongly imprisoning her for things that she did not do. Some she actually did, but some of these apparently she didn't do. And to top it all off, the fucked up thing about her being in on it and accomplice the whole time is I want to get to my favorite scene in the whole fucking movie.
I've been waiting to talk about it.
How was she in on it this whole time when she literally went through the needle pit? For those of you who don't, it's literally, when I say needle pit, literally, so during the movie when they're all trying to find combinations and get locks and serums and antidotes and stuff, one of the things is they're in one of the rooms, they uncover a tarp in which there is a pit carved out, and at the bottom of the pit are hypodermic needles.
Like just hundreds of fucking needles.
Hundreds of hypodermic needles. And it's supposed to be a trap for these because a lot of the people in the house are drug addicts.
Yes.
So this big guy,
Xavier, he's
such
a dick.
He's been the alpha male the whole time, and he's another one who's just been bossing everybody around. Yeah, you gotta do what I tell you. You know, it's like he's that kind of guy. He's wearing a tank top the whole time, just looks like a total bro.
Yeah.
So Xavier tries to do everything the right way, but he realizes they're running out of time. So he grabs Amanda, hoists her up in the air, and against her will throws her into the fucking pit of hypodermic needles. And you hear all the cracks, all the pokes, all the punctures.
All the sounds in that scene. From Shawnee Smith screaming. Shawnee is amazing. Obviously.
Shawnee deserves all of the accolades for the needle pit scene alone. Because you hear all the glass cracking. Because
don't get me wrong, the first movie, everyone loves the reverse bear trap, right? It's phenomenal. But there's something, it's probably one of my most uncomfortable traps. I don't like needles. I don't like syringes. So just seeing that and the way they did the effects and I think that's the only thing that saves me watching it now is knowing they used little
like that sugar glass type stuff.
well, like not just that, but like for the needles that are like sticking out of her, they just used fiber optic strands because they're like firm and they're kind of like on little latex parts, and they just put each one on so it looks like it's sticking out of her.
Which kudos to them.
Right?
And this one came out. This is Saw 2. This is not directed by James Wan, although James Wan and Lee Wanell were involved in the story and the writing process. This is directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who becomes a very important figure in the Saw franchise later. But Darren Lynn Bousman, terrific director, and again, he proves it here why he is such a brilliant director with the ability to create traps like the needle pit alone, and then
honestly, the traps in Saw 2 are probably some of my favorite.
Right, and of course we also get the fire pit with Abby.
Abby.
My name is Abby. It's my name. Whatever the fuck he says there. Yeah,
Abby,
yeah.
it's my name.
What's an Obi? It's Abby. It's my name. Fucking Abby is one of the weirdest characters in the whole fucking series.
I love the diversity of all the people that are in the house, and the fact that you get
Seventh Heaven girl. You get Beverly Mitchell.
Right.
She because this came out 2005, 2006. So she was like
from the poison before anything bad particularly happens to her.
So fucking anticlimactic. But she saw Jessica Biel in Texas Chainsaw. I was like, oh, my girl gonna make money off horror movies? Fuck yeah, I'm gonna get some of that horror movie money too. Put me in Saw 2, bitch.
You can't compare to Jessica Biel.
Nah, sorry, girl. You always gonna be second fiddle to J. Biel.
But yeah, the trap with I don't know exactly what it's called, but the razor box kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
The girl sticks her arms up, and obviously if you just didn't stick both of your fucking arms up there, because it's kind of like
she dumb.
You just have to be able to have another hand to push those up, because it's one of those, if you pull against it, it's going to cut you.
Of course.
But the way the scene is where it pans up and like she's bleeding everywhere, so like everything kind of goes red because the light's going through it, is just terrifying.
It is.
It's such a
she's
cool
just
trap,
left
though.
to die by Xavier.
Just leaves her there because he just wants the number on the back of her neck.
And then there's the one where Xavier gets in the fight with the other guy. I forget his name, but where he puts a nail-covered baseball bat in the back of the fucking dude's head. Yeah, and it's insane.
It's a brutal movie.
It is. It's Saw 2, one of the most brutal movies ever.
Yeah.
So Saw 2 ends. We find out that Eric is chained up, and and Amanda is now helping John in his pursuit to help change people's lives through these traps. So Saw 3 picks up. Amanda is now John's apprentice. Eric has to get out of the same trap that Dr. Gordon and Adam were in the first movie. So what does Eric do but take the toilet lid that we saw in the first movie, and he literally, this is the opening scene of the movie, guys. If you can't stomach this, you're not going to be able to stomach Saw 3. He literally takes the back of the toilet, that big-ass piece, and he just slams it on his fucking ankle as many times as he possibly can, breaks his own fucking foot, slides it out of the chain, and limps away from the fucking trap.
But can we say, though, the thought process of just going, well, I don't have a hacksaw or anything, and I obviously can't get through this
because he's not given a saw like Dr. Gordon and Adam.
He's just kind of like left there because he failed his test. Technically, it's
technically,
a game over.
Did,
she gives him the game over. Like, you're gonna rot and die in here.
Right.
And he's just kind of like, no, the fuck, I'm not. And I mean, they do a great job at how painful it is.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, I would probably rather beat the shit out of my foot than cut it off.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's just you're picking the lesser of two evils, because it's like.
But you keep most of your blood in your body.
And as we see, we're going to get to it anyway. As we see in Saw 4, Eric is in a walking boot. Yeah. Basically. So yeah. But yeah, Saw 3. So again, we're kind of introduced. So that's the end of Eric, though. Like, that's the last we really see of him until Saw 4.
Yep.
So Saw 3 then focuses on a new story with Dr. Lynn Denlin, who is, we find out that her marriage is not going well. We see her in a room with a man who is, for all intents and purposes, we believe to be her husband, and he says he wants a divorce. And she walks out, goes to work, but at work, she is then attacked and accosted and kidnapped by somebody in a pig mask, which we have seen has kind of been the calling card for Jigsaw and his apprentice Amanda.
Black robe, pig face mask.
Black red robe, pig mask, and she is kidnapped by them. We are also introduced to a character named Jeff, And Jeff lost his son to a drunk driver. He is still grieving over it. He's not handling it very well at all. He's left with his daughter, and they don't have the best relationship because Jeff is busy grieving. Meanwhile, his daughter is not getting the attention that she needs from her father. So we're introduced to Jeff. Jeff wakes up in a box suspended above a hallway. He breaks out of the box. His game has now begun, and he is told he needs to learn to appreciate his life and forgive the people involved with his son's death, and then his son's death caused by a drunk driver who was then let off by on a technicality by a judge.
Yeah.
And now Jeff has to go through this forgiveness process, and his game is supposed to teach him forgiveness. We go back to Lynn, who is kidnapped by Amanda, because as we find out, John Kramer, the Jigsaw killer, his cancer has gotten worse, and he is basically on the verge of death.
Yeah.
Lynn's game, which if you want to even call it that, she's given a shotgun collar.
Yeah.
And it's tied to John's pulse. If John's pulse goes below a certain level and he's in threat of dying, the shotgun collar will then basically blow her head off. And that's her game, which doesn't feel like a game as much as it feels like you're a kidnapping victim.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, kidnapping a little bit. She's also the doctor. You find that basically they want him to kind of perform some back alley brain surgery to take pressure off of his brain.
Which is one of the best scenes in the movie. Let's be real.
Let's be real.
She fucking literally cuts his
head open and
skull open, so
bonesaws
his brain can literally expand and not beat against his skull.
Right. She uses a drill to drill
like a Dremel
holes.
drill.
Yeah.
Like it's
not a medical drill.
No,
get your Phillips screwdriver out.
Like get 2 for 1 at Home Depot on sale now while supplies last.
Yes.
That kind of drill.
And it is very beautiful practical effects, however the hell they did it.
I don't know how the fuck they did it.
Blood pumps and all. But
and this one's also
fantastic.
directed by Darren Lynn Bousman
Yes.
of the third movie. He also goes on to direct the 4th movie, so we'll get that out of the way now. He's,
Yeah.
again, very important figure
Very
in the
important.
Saw universe. But yes, so the great effects.
So you've got 2 games going on.
2 games.
And
2
you don't
games.
know where they are specifically, other
Right.
than this looks like it's with Jigsaw and Amanda. It just looks like it's in one of Jigsaw's weird little areas. There's, plans and trap notes and
Obviously,
stuff
they're on the
everywhere.
run because
Right.
the police are aware. They caught up to John.
Right.
So they've got to hide kind of underground, which is why they had to kidnap Lynn.
Yes.
To even help John in the first place. And we get the sense that Amanda is still learning. Like John's teaching her.
Yeah.
But we get the vibe that we learn that Amanda is not actually learning as much. She's become aggressive. She's become very headstrong.
She's back on the struggle bus.
She is, and we even see her trigger warning. There is some self-harm in this from Amanda's standpoint. So although John's trying to teach her about valuing her life, we see that his lessons are not really going to heart.
Right.
And that creates tension between John and Amanda. That also creates tension between Lynn and Amanda because Amanda has grown this affectionate fondness for John. It's almost part paramour, part father figure. It's really confusing what her feelings are towards John, but there's a jealousy that develops as she sees Lynn doing a great job of taking care of John, and John's gratitude for that along the way.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, we still have Jeff's game going on while all this is happening, and Jeff's first test is he goes into a room which is very cold. It's basically a freezer. In the freezer, we see the woman who is a witness to his son's death.
Yes.
And her testimony could have put the guy behind bars.
Right.
And she didn't hold up her end of the bargain.
Yep.
So John has trapped her, but Jeff can save her. And the idea is that she's going to be pelted with water in this freezer, and if you know anything about water in a freezer, it's going to become ice. So as she's pelted with ice, she's going to freeze and freeze and
layer
freeze.
And layer by
layer
layer
and
by
layer.
layer.
So Jeff needs to get this key, which is behind some frozen, some
nice icy pipes.
Some
that
icy pipes.
are definitely so cold they're gonna burn you. Basically.
Right, exactly. It's that kind of freezer.
And you see his struggle because he's I think they kind of hint that he's turned to drinking, and so he's just this angry, hateful person who can't let go of what happened to his son. And even just with a witness, it questions how you would feel face to face if you had an opportunity to look someone in the face that could have helped, give justice to the death of your child, and they didn't. What is your choice going to be?
Right. So we see this woman, and it's really the first time I can remember gratuitous nudity in any of the Saw movies, because she is fully naked.
Yeah.
But Jeff, just at first, he's kind of berating her verbally, and yelling at her that she had the chance to help him and make everything right, and she didn't. And the whole time she's being pelted and misted with this water, and it keeps freezing. We see her face turning blue. We can see her, like, for all intents and purposes, she's probably getting frostbitten. And finally, Jeff sees enough, and he tries to get the key, but by the time he gets the key, his face hits one of the pipes, and his skin tears away. Yeah. And as he gets the key, he goes over to let her out, but he looks down and realizes that she's just coated in all these layers of ice, and she's just obviously dead,
frozen.
Yeah, and I think even parts of her break off. It's very grotesque.
Yeah.
So he couldn't save her. He moves on to the next trap, and it is the judge who let the guy get off. And he is treated to a whole ground-up pig guts being served at him as he's locked up in a pool.
One of the nastiest traps.
Just disgusting. And they keep talking about how bad the smell is. So Jeff actually does the right thing, and he has to burn some of his son's possessions in order to let the judge free. He does that. So he and the judge move on to the third trap, which that's where Jeff finds the man who actually was the drunk driver who killed his son.
Yes.
And he's basically hooked up, this young man is hooked up to a torture rack. Literally it's torture rack. The rack. And there are about 5 different positions on both of his legs and both of his arms and his head. So 5 different positions where this machine will twist and torque those parts of the body past the point of breaking.
Yeah, 360 degrees, basically. They're like big gears. I think that's one thing about this trap that's really uncomfortable. Besides the visual, you have this big, like,
the noise, yes.
And I think there's just, this is the room that has the shotgun in the box, right?
Yes, it does. Okay. Yeah. So there's a gun in a box. He has to get a
key, but it's like at the end of a box with a shotgun, and it's like if you were to pull it almost the wrong way, you're gonna like shoot yourself in the face trying to get this key to unlock the rack.
In fact, the judge that he saves makes that mistake, and he gets shot in the face. Yeah,
he's like in the way as he's reaching for the key, and it goes off, and he ultimately dies. So it kind of sucks. He's just standing in the wrong spot at the wrong time.
Exactly.
It's like, well, you almost drowned in ground up pig, but sorry, you just got shot. But even then, it's too little too late. You have this kid just absolutely gut-wrenching screaming. I remember seeing this movie at a theater that's no longer open here in Indy. It was called Hollywood Bar and Film. And you could sit, have dinner, watch a movie. There was kind of like a big table thing in front of each row. Almost cafeteria style. And I was just sitting there eating while this dude's like getting like turned on the rack. And there's a lot of bone popping out and cartilage popping and just horrendous noises.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously you can survive having your arms and, your ankle, leg twisted
But by
around.
the time it's like Jeff is too late. By the time it gets to his head, his neck snaps, and and the funny thing is, like, the gears keep turning. They don't just stop. They just keep turning. So even after the legs and arms and the head and the neck are snapped, it's still going. That's the fucked up thing of it all.
It's a messed up trap.
Yeah. So Jeff moves on to the last stage of his trap, and if he succeeds, his daughter is safe. And as we also find this out, John is in the position where he's dying, and they've done a lot to save him, but now it's down to Amanda is the one who's going to save. Amanda is the one who can save everybody, and that's what John tells us in the end. But Amanda is basically confronted with the choice that John knew there would be tension with Amanda and Lynn. So as we get to the end there, Amanda can put her differences aside with Lynn, and John will live, or she can be selfish and everybody dies. And that's exactly what happens. John warns Amanda not to do anything to Lynn. She doesn't obey. She shoots Lynn in the gut, and she's down there on the ground. As this is happening, Jeff bursts in. We find out he's in the same building as everybody. Jeff bursts in, sees that Amanda has shot Lynn, and we find out that Jeff and Lynn are husband and wife.
Yep.
So the guy that we saw at the beginning of the movie is not Lynn's husband wanting a divorce. It's her boy toy who wants her to divorce her husband so they can be together.
Yep.
So Jeff is the husband. Lynn is the wife. They lost their son. Their daughter's in danger now.
Yep.
And as Jeff sees Amanda shoot Lynn, Jeff sees Amanda and he has a gun and he shoots Amanda. And so Amanda is dying. Lynn is bleeding out. And as we remember, Lynn still has the shotgun collar. And and John, in a last-ditch effort, tries to explain to Jeff not to do anything to him because, remember, his heart rate is tied to Lynn's shotgun collar.
Yep.
Jeff does not listen. He kills Jigsaw with a fucking...
A saw.
Yeah, like one of those, I forget what the official word was, that motorized saw, like literally like a buzzsaw. Buzzsaw has a fucking buzzsaw, cuts John's throat. As John dies, Lynn tries to warn him, but of course she's been shot, so she can't really communicate too well.
Right.
And as she's reaching out to Jeff to tell him not to do it, he kills Jigsaw. Jigsaw's pulse, John Kramer's pulse goes below the level. Lynn's collar goes off and shoots her in the fucking head.
Yep.
And
he's just kind of left there with it all.
Yeah.
Doesn't know where his daughter is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just kind of think that he's just going to probably die in there.
Yes.
Because I think there's like a lockdown door or something that also happens in the process. There's a lot of weird trap shit going on. But yeah, it's interesting that they went the way that they did with Amanda. I feel like, she was pretty level-headed. And I like the way that they build her up in this movie. She gets more and more tense to the point where she's like, he's literally telling her, take the collar off. And she's like, no. And it's like, bitch, why? Just do it. Like, it's fine now. But I think she's also, you're talking about the relationship with her and John. It's like, she sees that she helped, she did the surgery successfully. Like, it helped with his symptoms. And I feel like Amanda almost wants to just keep her there, thinking that'll keep John alive.
Right.
Yeah,
it's very interesting, the dynamic you get into with Amanda and John, Amanda and Lynn, and that whole triangle there with everything that occurs during their story. But it comes together beautifully, and as we see, we see literally John Kramer dies, and that is something that they stick to. They don't undo it. They never change the fact that John dies in 3.
No, not at all.
That's one thing that I respect that they could have gone and retconned it like some other horror movies did, but they did not do that. So brings us to Saw 4, which starts what I call the Detective Hoffman saga. So in Saw 3, we are introduced to a detective named Hoffman who is helping who's helping Carrie, who we kind of glossed over this, but Carrie dies at the beginning of the 3rd movie.
Yeah, with the trap that's clearly not meant to get out
exactly, which is one of Amanda's traps, which is why another reason John punishes her the way he does, because her trap is inescapable, and Carrie dies, even though she gets out of it.
Yeah, she literally puts her hand in a vat of acid for a key, but then can't get out of the trap.
Yeah, Amanda's trap is weak sauce.
It's pretty, though.
It is. It's called the Butterfly. If you see it, you'll love it. But Detective Hoffman is introduced in the 3rd one. The 4th movie starts. We see John Kramer's autopsy. And there is something in his stomach. They pump the contents of his stomach, and there we see what is something coated in wax. And then we see it cut open, and it is a tape. And we get a flashback to where John shoved something in his mouth in the 3rd movie and swallowed it. It turns out it was the tape. I'm not going to lie.
The 4th movie was really rough for me.
The 4th movie is probably one of the worst ones. 4 and 5 are really, it's a rough stretch.
I think
if
4
you can make it through
probably
4,
my lowest.
If you can make it through 4 and 5, you're a true Saw fan. I really believe that.
But we're going to go over it a little bit anyway.
Yep. So Saw 4, it starts off and John says, Detective Hoffman, this is your test now. So we are also introduced to Art, who was John Kramer's lawyer, who he is subjected to a test where he has his mouth sewn shut, and he's trapped in a room with a guy who has his eyes sewn shut. So the guy can only talk, but he can't see. Art, the lawyer, can see, but he can't talk. So they've got to work together to not kill each other. And since
because if you wake up in a room and your eyes are sewn shut, you're not going to fuck around with
and they're
anyone
tied
else.
together through this machine that if they're pulled into it, it will just like...
Oh, yeah, the crank thing.
It'll crank them and kill them. So Art survives that trap, but he is now put into another test, and his test is he's kidnapped Detective Hoffman, and he has kidnapped... We see the return of Eric Matthews. So they are connected in a trap together where Eric's on a block of ice. And obviously the whole thing is the block of ice, if it melts, he is hung. And then the water that's melting on Detective Matthews will go into Hoffman's chair that he's connected to, which is essentially an electric chair, and electrocute him. So their survival is tied to each other. And Art is keeping track of that. Now, the person tested in this one is Lieutenant Rigg, who we saw in 2 and 3 as well. So Rigg becomes the main character. He becomes the tested officer during this one because ever since his friend Carrie died, he has now taken up the mantle, become obsessed with solving the Jigsaw murders, and to see what's happening with them. Because they're still, now that he's in a trap, they think John's dead. They think everything's hunky-dory. It's not.
Right.
So we are treated to Rigg's test, and there's some interesting stuff here. I won't get into it too much because it's kind of there's
a lot of muddy plot.
There's a lot of muddy plot. This is where it really gets muddied, and we're also introduced to a detective, some FBI agents, Strom and Perez. And Strom is one of my favorite characters because the minute he's introduced, you know he's not here to fuck around. He's just this. He's hyper focused. He's ready to figure everything out, and we find so we've got Strom, we've got Perez from the FBI. They're investigating it. We've got Rigg going through a test, and they're following it. And the whole time, Strom, he's the Mr. Smarty Pants know-it-all. He's figuring everything out.
His lines.
His lines are some of the fucking worst. It's like this is a bad example, but it's like every time somebody's like, "Hey, what do you see on the wall here?" They're pictures. Wrong. They're photos. Anyway, moving on, you dumbass. Like that's how he treats everybody around him. He's one of those guys. And he's just, I love him because he is such an asshole.
Yeah. His character's pretty great.
Right.
Honestly.
So Rigg goes through his test. He gets to the end to save Detective Matthews and Hoffman. There ends in a shootout between him and Art. They shoot each other. And in the process, Eric's ice block, it melts.
Yeah.
He's done. And he falls. And only the thing is, he's not hung. That's what we think is going to happen. He's going to end up because he's hung. No, 2 more fucking ice blocks come out of nowhere and smash his fucking head, and he explodes. That's how they kill off Eric Matthews.
Yeah, you're like, oh, he's gonna... Nope.
Yep.
It's just literally once he drops... It's almost like it sets off a cord. It's like whenever you go to pull something and it just... reacts up at the top.
It's like a Rube Goldberg machine. It's fucking crazy. But, so since he dies, you're thinking, oh, the ice block's going to melt and it's going to electrocute Hoffman. Nope. Here's the twist. Fucking Hoffman was a Jigsaw apprentice this whole time, too.
Yep.
So Hoffman stands up as he watches Rigg bleed out, and you realize that he was in on it the whole time. So the test, now, what we saw at the beginning when he says the test is for you, Detective Hoffman, it's not him to solve the crime. It's him to be the new Jigsaw killer and pick up where John left off.
And that, my dear, is how you get more movies.
Right. That's how they've stretched it out. So 5 focuses on Hoffman now that we know he is the villain. We see, I forget if it's at the end of 4, at the beginning of 5, or both, but we see Hoffman actually leave as the hero in that building, and he's got Jeff's daughter, so that connects it to the 3rd one.
Yes.
Because we find out all of this is going on pretty much simultaneously.
And he's like, no one survived.
Right. No one survived except me and the little girl. Yeah. Well, guess what? That whole time he was getting Strom in a trap because Strom was close to finding everything out. So Strom is in a trap, and it's one of my favorite fucking traps in the 5th one, even though the 5th one's not the best movie. Right. Strom is literally attached to it. He has his head in a goddamn box, a glass box, and we see 2 tubes leading into the box, and then they're just going to fill with water. So basically, Strom is just going to die.
Like drown in a box. Head.
Fucking terrific. You're like, there's no way he can get out of this. No, this motherfucker straight up MacGyvers his way out of this trap. Yeah. He finds a ballpoint pen in his pocket, undoes it, has enough fucking sense as he's drowning to unscrew this pen. What does he do with the ballpoint pen? Motherfucker straight up stabs himself in the throat, gives himself a makeshift trachea with this pen tube, and that's how he fucking survives. He just goes,
just breathes out of the hole in his neck.
Who the fuck thinks of that?
Because, I mean, you can just close your mouth and not let any water in, but you can still breathe. Right. And it's brilliant because it is a trap that he's supposed to die in. But it's just an intense
Although I think
scene.
somebody did point out that his arms were long enough that
Literally, yes.
he
If you
could have
look
probably
up
pulled
above,
out the tubes.
I think they relied a little bit too much on the darkness of the room and didn't think anyone was going to look. But you can literally look, and there's probably multiple ways to get out of that
He probably
box.
could have gotten out other than
I also think it
giving
would
himself a
be
tracheotomy.
really hard to know the exact circumference of his neck to be like, well, the box has to close in a snug fit. Like, was there nothing like rubber that it could shift at all? You couldn't squish
You
your
couldn't let
neck
a little
to
bit out at a time.
get water out of there, right? So, I mean, it's kind of a
It's
shit
fucking
trap,
nuts
but
though,
it's
because the dude just
fucking awesome.
Like watching a grown man shove a fucking pen through his throat to make a tracheotomy is ridiculous.
And this is why you always have a pen.
Clearly.
You never know.
So this movie is really weird because we see Hoffman kind of abusing his power in the fifth one as a detective, as an
Yeah.
apprentice of Saw. Yeah, we find out that Hoffman is now putting people that have wronged him into traps. There's a guy named Seth who was apparently in an abusive relationship that led to the death of Hoffman's sister. But
Yeah.
when we look at it, the trap is inescapable. The way we learn this is because Strom now has this hole in his throat, and the whole time he's like walking around monologuing the whole fucking movie as he goes to all these scenes, and he's like, "What did you do? You gave yourself a front row seat."
Yeah, they realize that he likes to watch, and like a lot of the trap scenes, they notice a little hole, and I think that even goes back to the first movie where there's like the peephole in one of the traps.
And
you know,
Zepp is watching shit too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a theme, but at the same time, it's like the way they do it, where it's awful just watching Strom just monologue the whole fucking
Strom's
movie.
dialogue.
It's like, "What do you think you're up to?" It's just the most generic police dialogue. And again, he's monologuing. He's by himself most of the movie, chasing Jigsaw, as we find out that basically Hoffman is trying to set up Strom to look like he's the Jigsaw killer. So it's this kind of, they're planting evidence to make Strom look like he was part of the Jigsaw killer or he was an apprentice. The end of the movie comes, and Strom is finally caught up with Hoffman, and they end up in a tussle. And he sees a trap. He sees a box full of glass shards. It's like a glass coffin with glass shards for the bed. And obviously Strom is like, well, he's going to try to get me in there, so fuck it. He gets Hoffman in the trap, and you're like, yes, Strom outsmarted Hoffman. And then Strom plays the tape that was supposed to be for him, and he finds out it's still for him.
Yes.
And we find out that Hoffman is now safe in the box because, as the tape explains, the walls are going to start closing in.
Yep.
That coffin will go into the floor
Yep.
where you are safe from the walls closing in. And Strom, who seems like the most intelligent character in the film up to this point, just throws that it just shits the bed. Just like IQ drops 25,000 points, and he just becomes the dumbest motherfucker in the room. And the walls close in on him. You get these brutal scenes where his bones are crunching and smashing, and blood is dripping everywhere as Hoffman's coffin lowers down to where he's safe. And you just get these final shots of blood as Strom just gets smashed. And then we find out that Hoffman was successful in making Strom look like the Jigsaw killer because now it's all planted on Strom, and Hoffman has all the heat off of him.
And the big thing that we totally glossed over with 5, there are some pretty cool traps in the movie, but you get the whole group of people that kind of have to work together in a couple of these, correct?
Yes. So yeah, that is a big subplot to 5. So 4 is all about Rig. 5 introduces this terrific plot that Natalie brought up. I'm glad we didn't move on without talking about it.
The Fatal 5 trial is what this lovely website wants to call it, because there are 5 people.
Yeah, there's 5 people. And basically it is they have to figure out what their common denominator is, kind of like what happened in Saw 2. Mm-hmm. So they have to figure out what their common denominator is, how they're all interconnected. And they all kind of they're all kind of these very they all have an attitude about them. Nobody trusts anybody, but they're all trying to figure out what their deal is. And you figure out along the way, as these people are being picked off one by one, because basically we see that you have to perform an action in each one to get to become safe. Like in the
first one's like there's chains on their neck.
Yes, yeah. There's something around their neck.
They have to get a key to unlock it.
Yes.
And one person tries to run, it pulls someone else back.
Right,
Kind of a thing.
and then immediately just kills them.
Yeah.
So we are So that's the first trap. They all have to get this shit off their neck to move on to the next one. They move into the next room. It's these tunnels, and a bomb's about to go off.
Yeah, there's like the jars on the ceiling that have like nails and shit
Nail
in
bombs
it.
and shit. Yeah. So there's that, and they realize that they have to duck for cover, and we see 4.
There's only enough spaces.
There's only enough spaces for 4, and we have 5 people. So obviously one's not going to get it. So they tussle to see who's the odd man out. Well, one person's eliminated because the bombs explode. The next one, they have to go
the electric bathtub.
The electric bathtub, and they all have to make it through that. And they sacrifice another person in order to push them. They push her into the electric bathtub. She dies. The door opens. Then we get to the last room, and it's these 2. They realize that they have to. The last 2 people, a lady and a guy, they have to bleed into these vats, and once the beaker fills up with enough blood, the door will open.
Yeah.
And along the way, we found out that they basically faked a fire for insurance money. All these people were involved in faking a fire for insurance money.
Yeah, it was everyone kind of
very muddy
lied
plot.
in one way. Well, I think that's probably one of the most clear parts of the movie is them talking about their part in the thing with the house. Because there's the one guy who was like, I didn't know people were in there.
Right.
And
one guy's a drug addict who's a trust fund kid. The other, there's a reporter. There's an insurance agent. There's a realtor. There's
basically
a reporter.
everyone turning a blind eye to the situation to profit off of it. And
exactly.
You get that by the end, but you also realize with all the traps, if they had just slowed down and worked together, they would have made it because they need 10 pints of blood. And obviously, one person shouldn't lose 5 pints of blood.
Right, so now you're down to the last 2 people, and you have no choice but to do 5 pints of blood each. Whereas if it were 5 people, like it was supposed to be,
2 pints is
2
easy.
pints each, and nobody would be out and too much blood.
Right.
So you realize, and then the tunnels, there were enough room. The tunnels were huge.
Yeah.
And you think that the whole time, you're like, those tunnels are fucking huge. They all could have fit in one, really.
Yeah.
But they see 4 and think, oh, one person's got to go.
Yep.
The electric bathtub, if 5 people would have taken the electric charge, everybody was survived, and you move on. Mm-hmm. So it's all about this numbers game. So you get to the last 2 people. You've got the trust fund guy, who is a drug addict, and they each put their hand, him and the last lady, they put their hand in, and they're just getting hacked by this buzzsaw as it bleeds them and gives them gets them their 10 pints of blood.
Yeah, she splits her fucking arm in half because she just keeps
he
going.
does.
He does.
He does. And then you realize she barely even put her fucking hand in, and she let him take all of the abuse. So the 10 pints of blood is mostly him.
Mostly his, because she lives.
She lives. She gets out of the trap.
If y'all know anything about blood loss, there's only so much you can lose and survive. So it's one of those scenes where you could have the 5 people put their hand in, let it cut them, just bleed out, and live. But it's like he literally does. He just keeps pushing his hand through. It's like it's enough slices.
It's good. It's good. That's enough slices.
And there's that gnarly fucking scene where he pulls his arm out and it's just flopping in two like a little broken wing.
Yes. So this is where I want to kind of stop and take a break because not the episode, just for the movies right now because we need to stop and explain that the whole time this is going on, after John has died, we are introduced to his widow. Dun, dun, dun. There's a wife. Her name is Jill. And Jill and John were a happily married couple until John's cancer diagnosis. And they drifted apart. And, of course, the police don't believe that she had no involvement, so they keep breathing down her neck. And we find out that after John died, she was given things like a key and a box. And there's all these mysteries going on right now. And of course, we have Hoffman, who has taken up the mantle of Jigsaw. He's doing his thing. Jill's got her own thing going on. These are all stories that are transpiring in the nebulous surrounding these movies. In fact, I think it's in the 5th one that we see the story where Jill, we find out, was she was working in a community clinic where the less fortunate and lower income people could go and get help.
It's kind of
like a methadone
clinic,
right?
I think they actually say that.
Yeah, it's one of those people are getting clean, and we see this drug addict who frequents Jill's clinic named Cecil.
He has a trap in the 5th movie, I think.
Right.
Or maybe it's the 4th, actually.
It's
I think
these,
it's
again. This is where shit gets muddy, guys. 4, 5,
I think it's
6,
the
and 7
4th
are
because
pretty
he
muddy.
has the knife trap or the knife chair where he's like in a chair and he has to press his face
Right.
against the knives to
Right.
push through it, and they almost open out like a turnstile. And so this drug addict, Jigsaw, it's one of his first, I think he kind of, fucks around with, practicing his traps and things like that. But yeah, he's this drug addict that frequents the clinics. It can be kind of irate, and tries to get a fix late one night and
John
slams
is
slams the
literally
door into
waiting.
her.
Yeah, John is literally waiting for Jill.
Yes.
To leave. So John's there. Jill is getting ready to leave, and like Natalie said, Cecil is there fiending, trying to get drugs from the clinic. So Jill's pregnant with their baby, who they were going to name Gideon, which is later the name of John's warehouse, which was kind of how they track him.
Yeah.
I would have made it less obvious, but hey,
Right.
that's just me. But so Jill is pregnant with Gideon. There's a late night. Cecil's going and he's fiending for drugs. Jill makes the mistake of unlocking the door. Cecil pushes through, and as he pushes through, he smashes her stomach. Jill ends up miscarrying. John is irate, and of course, then he gets his cancer diagnosis. He and Jill fall apart, but in the process, John does the trap that Natalie was talking about, where there's knives on Cecil's face. Well, Cecil actually does get out of the knife trap.
Yeah.
And as he does, he goes to attack John. John steps out of the way, and Cecil falls into a pit of barbed wire.
Right.
And dies eventually. So
Yeah.
And we also find out that Cecil had a girlfriend. Her name, Amanda. So that's where John first found Amanda. She was Cecil's girlfriend. He put Cecil in a trap. He failed. Amanda goes in a trap. She succeeds.
Yes, and then realizes that her drug addiction and self-harm is not the way to live, and as that lovely famous scene in the first movie, he saved me.
Right. So that we keep seeing Amanda throughout this whole thing. So that brings us really up to date up to that point, and we hit Saw 6. And Saw 6 is one of the best in the franchise, hands down.
4 and 5 were rough. Once James and Lee Wanell dropped out.
Right. And even with the 5th movie,
was just
Darren Lynn
rough.
Bousman left, and David Hackle took over as director. Then in the 6th one, we get Kevin Gruter, who takes over for the director of the 6th movie, and he also directs the 7th movie. So we kind of get this revolving door of different directors. Dunstan and Melton, who are the writers, stay on for most of 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there is a little bit of consistency with the writing, but the directing and the vision kind of lost its focus. But in 6 with Kevin Gruter, he does a phenomenal job kind of bringing the series back to its roots.
Yeah, and the story gets better. Like, I know you just mentioned the writers, but God damn it, the 4th and 5th movie are just a mess to me.
Yeah, if you get through it, kudos.
I remember being more confused at the end of the 5th movie or at the end of the 4th movie than anything. 5th movie, at least, I liked a lot of the traps. There was a little bit more cohesive for me, but it just gets so muddy, and I feel like they're trying to bring in so many characters at one time. They're like, hey, look at this twist. Look at this twist.
Yeah, it's a lot of new characters that are thrown in your face and there's not a lot of characters. Basically nobody from the original left. So you're just following these characters. You're like, oh God, by the time you get attached to somebody, they're dead. Right. So like what happens with Strom, he's introduced in 4 and he's killed off in 5, and you're like, holy shit, I barely had time to get to know him. So 6 rolls around, and 6 introduces, I'm terrible with the names in these characters, but there's this insurance agent who turned down John's claim for medical benefits for his cancer. They wouldn't cover his cancer treatment. So John was left without any way to pay for his cancer treatment, and this insurance company just kind of looked at him and said...
His name's William Easton.
William Easton, that's right. Yeah, that's right, William Easton.
And don't forget, this movie starts with the really badass trap, where we had the Scream Queens season.
Yes, the winner, Tanedra Howard.
Yes, Tanedra Howard does Pound of Flesh, which we've talked about before on our Scream Queens episode, where they basically have how much of your body can you get in this thing to make it go down and get out of the trap.
Right. She cuts off her fucking arm.
She's this kind of thinner, small, kind of petite character, and the other guy on the other side of the trap's kind of a heavier person.
So he thinks to cut off his flesh.
Oh, I'm going to cut off, the fat on my stomach. I'm going to cut my flesh. And she just kind of looks at herself like, I don't fucking have that. and just grabs a cleaver and cuts her fucking arm
Hacks
off.
her fucking arm off.
So that's how the movie starts.
Yeah,
I felt
terrific
like
opening.
it started strong.
No, terrific opening. Yeah, starts strong, starts amazing.
And then it gets into William Easton,
Right,
which
you
is
get
a
into
really
William Easton.
shit character. Like the flashbacks of John Kramer in the office with him getting declined is honestly really soul crushing to watch.
And we see that he has the bullpen, which is a group of his these insurance agents who are underneath him. He is their boss, and basically he tasks them with, you need to find a way to deny everybody of these coverage, and they do a great job of doing it.
Yeah,
and
looking
his team
through
has
all
the
of
record.
their paperwork, finding the fault.
Yep.
Because obviously they have to have a legal way to say no.
Right. And
Otherwise, someone can countersue or whatever it may be. But for them finding the little flaw of, oh, well, we can't give this person money because of this one thing that they did in this moment. And so that's what that team does, is to fuck people over who need assistance.
And we see he's done it to other clients who needed treatment for different diseases and ailments. And it turned out to be the nail in the coffin for these people. So, John has a great line where he looks at William Easton and he says, he's like, you think, and he's used this line before, you think it is the living that will decide your fate, when really the dead will have the final say over what happens to you.
Yes.
I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's essentially the essence of it. So William Easton wakes up in a trap, and obviously Hoffman is trying to outsmart the feds. Who we see, Agent Perez, is not really dead. We thought she died in the fourth movie. Some shit happened to her. I won't go into detail, but some shit happened. Looked like Perez was dead. She's gone for the fifth movie. She comes back in the sixth movie because they realized they fucking killed off all of their characters and had to bring somebody back from the dead, and they brought her back.
Yeah.
So she is working with agent by the name of, Erickson, and Perez and Erickson are trying to chase who they think is the Jigsaw killer. And it's Hoffman. Meanwhile, we realize that Jill is still kind of nosing around and doing stuff too. So that's kind of sets the stage for that. But William Easton wakes up, finds himself in a trap. And one of the first things he has to do is he is met with one of my favorite traps, and it is the carousel.
Yes.
So the carousel, shotgun carousel, is his entire team. The bullpen are attached to a carousel, and each of them has a shotgun in front of them. Now, William can decide to do something that hurts himself, and I forget exactly again. These later movies get a little crazy.
He's got his fingers in something.
It's his fingers. Yeah,
it's
he can lose his
fingers. It's like a pressure switch or something he has to push on. And yeah, I think it will slowly crush like finger by finger.
Right.
And if he does that, it'll be able to save somebody.
Right. So the carousel spins, it stops on a certain person, and he has to decide if he wants to sacrifice something on him to let them live.
So already you're fucked, because not everybody's probably going to make it.
No, exactly. It's so fucking, and it's like, and it gets to, and each of them has to explain themselves, and they all basically sell each other out, and they're just, it's this great thing because you see these petty squabbles, and it's like, are you kidding? This is going to decide your fate, and you guys are just being fucking petty with each other, and it shows you that they're not really a team, they're not really comrades.
No.
He didn't build a team, he just built up 6 people who are enemies with each other.
Yeah, and a bunch of liars.
A bunch of fucking liars.
And it just spins, and then the shotgun clicks. But if he pushes against the switch, it will shoot up above their heads, like it moves the gun away.
Right.
So
but he has to do
up.
something to himself. He has to cause himself pain.
So technically, he could, I guess, save all of them.
Right.
He would just absolutely destroy his hands.
Yes.
And it's like he can't get enough strength to do it, so he only does it a few times. But then there's others that just the shotgun goes off and they're dead, just spinning on the merry-go-round with everybody.
Yeah, it's just fucked up and bizarre. I think maybe 2 of the girls make it.
I think so.
Yeah, most of the people die.
I think one of them says something about it being sexist too, because they are saying all these things on the wheel, and they're like, the one girl.
Well, he's only got
pregnant.
so many chances. He's only got so many chances, and he saves. That's right. It's
the one
his
girl says
hands.
she's
It's
pregnant.
both of his hands
That's
because he has to. He only has 2. He can only save 2 of them because it's his hands. Shit, guys, you see it. We're uncovering. We're trying to remember the movie as we're recording this. So this is great. You guys are getting firsthand look at how fucked up these movies are.
Yeah.
So
and
he has to do his
that's
hands.
The thing is,
so he
he's
can only
already
save two, and he saves both two of these girls, and it comes down to the last guy, and he's like, the whole time he can't save him. He's just like, oh, real fucking rich.
Yeah.
You're gonna save them. Hope you're happy. These two fucking bitches.
Yeah.
And he just starts going off, and it's one of my favorite scenes because this guy, I've never seen him in anything else, but he just fucking delivers the performance of a lifetime, just chastising everybody else. He's like, look, if I'm going down, then fuck all y'all.
Yeah.
It's tremendous.
The dialogue from all of them is pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing is, too, at this point, you know, he's already gone through a few traps. He has, I think the first one is the oxygen one.
Yes.
And then it goes to him picking basically his job where you go, am I going to make more money off of this case or this case? And he has to look at like two coworkers and save one. And he saves the younger guy and lets the old lady die because the young guy has longer to live.
Right. I
might be getting that backwards.
Yeah,
but that's
no, he does. He has
the
to save
premise.
his secretary versus some young guy, and he has to decide, or a janitor or something. Yeah, it's really fucked up. He has to save somebody.
I just remember the age difference thing going on because to an insurance person, it's about assessing the risks.
Right.
And that's what he's supposed to do in that situation.
It's terrific.
So half of them, I mean, the first one, it's either he dies or the other guy dies. And then the second one, he has to pick someone to die. And then three of the five to die. Not for me to die.
For the other guy to die. So that's and William Easton is also portrayed as not just a shitty guy because he's an insurance agent. We see him on the phone and he's like turning down. He's like denying his wife
or wife or something.
Yeah, so you think it's his wife. And then you get to the end of the trap, and you realize the lady that's trapped is not his wife; it's his sister. Who is
this goes into the acid room thing, right?
Right. So at the end, there's two groups in cages. You have a mom and a son, who we see earlier. They are the wife and son of a guy who was turned down for insurance for his treatment by William Easton.
Passes away,
and he dies, and they keep talking about your father, and we think it's William Easton's wife and his son, when really it's not. It is the guy who was denied coverage by William Easton, and then the woman in the other cage is not his wife either, it's his sister. Yeah. And you realize he's not really a shitty guy. He may not be the best brother, but you know, he's not cheating, he's not doing anything. You realize William Easton is just a guy doing his job.
Yeah.
And while it sucks and he's shitty and he's not the best person in the world, he's not completely a monster. He's just kind of in a shitty situation too, because it shows you the real enemy is corporate America, because we're all put in these situations where we have to make these fucked up choices just to make a living.
Yeah, but also, you know, you get from him that there's a lot of times that he says he could have made the right decision, but it was better for their paychecks not to. Yep. So it's kind of one of those, you know, situations where I feel like these people get corrupted by the positions that they're in. Yep. Because ultimately, once going through these traps and he's realizing how much he's changed and grown into a monster, really.
Right.
You know, it's kind of fucked up that it takes that much for somebody.
But he does, at the end of it, he does learn his lesson. He's reunited with his sister and he feels great about everything. But John says, it's the dead who will have the ultimate decision over your fate. And when he says that, he means that this guy's family, who was denied coverage and this kid's dad died, it's up to him. You can either kill this guy, or you can let him live and go off with his sister and understand forgiveness.
So he gets...
The wife says, I want to let you live.
Yeah.
The son, who is still, for all intents and purposes, a teenager and young and impulsive, decides, no, I'm not going to let you live. He flips a switch. A giant thing of fucking acid in these syringes comes down and stabs William Easton in the midsection and in his torso, and just starts injecting him with acid. And his sister has to sit there and watch as her brother is just ingested with all of this acid, and his midsection just erodes from the inside. So, in the entire time that this is happening, Perez and Erickson are closing in on Hoffman. And is this where... Yes, this is where
the reverse bear trap again.
This is where you get the reverse bear trap again, because Jill understands that Hoffman is setting up all these traps to intentionally fail.
Yes.
He's not living by John's method.
Yeah, he's not living by John's
also,
method.
Erickson and Perez are closing in on Hoffman.
Yeah.
In fact, they have a voice recording, because Hoffman and Jigsaw, the thing is, they leave these tapes.
Mm-hmm. And they've
for
been
their
able
victims.
to adjust it. And
Yes.
get the sound kind of the warping down technology.
Right. And they finally use the technology to reverse everything, and they realize that the voice is Hoffman's. As they realize that Hoffman backed into a corner, decides to kill everybody in the fucking place, and goes on the run.
Right.
Also, Jill, though, finds Hoffman, puts him in drugs him, puts him in the reverse bear trap. Well, Hoffman, at the end of the movie, he's a fucking genius. Jill puts him in the trap, runs away because she's just fucking terrified for her life that she's been involved in all this. Hoffman, in the reverse bear trap, literally gets out of the chair, goes over to a fucking window, traps the reverse bear trap, the mouth, the jaws of it, in a grate.
Like, it's like metal bar kind of grate thing.
Right.
He just like uses the bear trap to break the glass, shoves it in there, and so it can't open all the way.
It can open, but it can't open 100%.
Yeah,
it can open
like
just enough to where it'll fuck him up, but he's able to wiggle out of it, and that's exactly what happens. And we see the last shot is he is just screaming with his flap of skin hanging over his face.
Half of his face on one side's like gnarled.
Which brings us to Saw, the final chapter, Saw 3D, Saw 7, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And Hoffman survives the reverse bear trap. Since this was in 3D, there's a bunch of random shots in here that are supposed to make the 3D experience.
Oh my god, this one's so fun. Like, and honestly, so I was just looking at it because we were, we try to talk about like the cool traps in each movie, and some of them are more gruesome than others. This one also had another, it's like the season 2 Scream Queen winner was in it, but her role was kind of
very
not
limited,
as cool as Tanidra's was.
Right. Tanidra even has more in Saw 7 than this new girl does, which is funny to me.
Yeah, I feel like most of her, it's just her screaming under a car. Really.
Right. Yeah. There's some very interesting traps, like the one you talk about with the Scream Queens season 2 winner Gabby West. She plays part of a white supremacist group. The leader of the white supremacist group is the late Chester Bennington, R.I.P. You will forever be missed, Chester.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's had a more profound effect on us as millennials than Chester Bennington. So, really great cameo that we get in this. He's the leader of this white supremacist group.
He's a kick-ass screamer, so having him scream while he tries to rip off of a car seat, it's like,
he's glued to a car seat and he's screaming.
I like this new track. Know, it's so cool. I was looking at, they call it the horsepower trap because basically, you have this car suspended over the girl who's chained up under it. So when it kicks in, the tire's spinning. And he's like super glued to the leather car seat, and he has to rip himself off to grab the lever that's up in the front of the car to stop the engine so it's not going to drop. And when the timer goes, I think he's got like 60 seconds or some shit.
Which is also linked to the jaw of one of his other white supremacist buddies.
Oh, yeah, the dude
and then there's
behind
another
him.
guy in front of them who will get run over by the car the minute it accelerates.
Yeah, so literally just not over, but we have front, back, under, and in.
Right. So like Chester playing the leader of this white supremacist neo-Nazi group. He's got to free himself. He's got to let the trap. He's got to stop the trap. Of course, he doesn't do that. So what happens? Except the car drops onto the fucking girl's skull, smashing her fucking head. It rips the jaw of the guy off behind them and runs over the guy in front of them. And then, of course,
crashes.
Chester is fucking propelled from the fucking car into no man's fucking land. And he's dead. So one of the best fucking traps. And, of course,
it's a wild one.
Right.
I think it's cool seeing a multi-person and honestly knowing like their background, like I didn't want them to escape.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those, okay, that's just like, it's a cool scene. There's a lot of these where you don't have any attachments to the people. And even in, 4, 5, and 6, there's a lot of people that you don't really care about, but there's really cool traps. I like the one with the couple where the woman has to pull the rebar out of herself.
Yeah, that's
I think
Saw
in the
4.
fourth movie.
Yeah, it's like she's tied to her husband who is abusive to her.
Yeah.
And that's kind of... Yeah, it's like it's Riggs' trap. He has to decide if he wants to save this abusive husband or not. It's
cool. It's one of the cooler traps in the movie that I like the least.
But Saw 7, Saw
got
the final chapter,
strong ass traps in it.
We get the return of Dr. Lawrence Gordon because we see a support group for Saw victims. And for those of you, we lived through it real time.
Right.
And it was we were on the end, like people like me, if you're like me, you were on the internet every year waiting for news about the next Saw movie because it would release every year. And every year, Carrie L said, I have no desire to ever be involved with another Saw movie.
Right.
And you're like, fuck. We need you, Dr. Gordon. And he kept saying he wasn't going to do it. He kept saying he wasn't going to do it. And what happened? Saw 7,
He's
the
back,
final
baby.
chapter. He's back. And of course, he has one leg because he cut the other one off and he walks with a cane. And he just has this really cool, ominous speech at a support group for Saw victims. And he kind of just dips out.
Which you see, cameos from others.
Yeah.
Again, Tanidra sitting there with one arm.
The guy from Saw 5 who almost cut his whole, bladed his whole
Somehow
fucking arm
lives.
up. He's somehow good. I think Matthew's son Daniel is in there.
Yeah, Daniel's there.
So there's a few callbacks. The lady with the rebar through her is there too.
Yeah.
The secretary from Saw 6 is there. So you have some great cameos and callbacks to past traps. Because again, for all intents and purposes,
Very
we
quick
thought
scene, but
thought this was the last Saw movie.
Yeah,
done.
we
were fooled. So
there are more.
So there's so much going on. So you got the thing with Hoffman and Jill. You've got Dr. Gordon returns. And then the whole time, for some reason, they introduce this new detective who is one of the kids from fucking the first Final Destination movie. He's just, he's terrible.
Yeah.
There's a scene where he's protecting Jill and he's like, you're fucking crazy, lady. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
This guy's weird.
He's...
Hoffman's on the run from this guy.
I'm glad
they try
he
to
didn't
make up
last
some
long.
story between the two of them that ties the two of them together, but it was just really thrown together last minute. Then we also have this story about a guy named Bobby Dagan, I think is his name.
Yep, you're right.
And Bobby is a survivor of a Saw trap from years ago, and he has written a memoir, and he's got this beautiful life now, and he appreciates his life just like what Jigsaw was trying to teach him. Only problem with that is he didn't actually survive a Saw trap.
Yep.
He saw a news story about people who had survived awful things.
Yeah.
Decided to lie.
Make his own survival, how he talks about putting these hooks through his chest and he
Yes.
pulls himself up to get some lever. And, I think it introduces him like on a talk show or like reading something. And it's just, he basically lives on the back of all the people who've died.
Yes.
And these people who go to support groups who have nothing to do with being in the media. And he just makes himself like a martyr.
Exactly. He's profiting off of something that never even happened to him. And he's got a buddy who used to be, they used to just be drunks in a bar together. Now all of a sudden it's his manager and his agent.
Right.
He's also got a lawyer. He's also got a publicist. He's also and he's got his wife. So this is his kind of his inner circle. And they all end up in fucking Saw traps. So they end up in Saw traps. I guess before we get into their traps, we should kind of go back to the beginning of Saw 7. It starts off with this big public trap because now Jigsaw has gone. The story of Jigsaw is famous, as we see with Bobby. The story's so well known that he's imitating Jigsaw survivors. Well, it's so well known because we see in the beginning of Saw 7, a storefront opens, and there is a display in a storefront, just like you would see at fucking Macy's or JCPenney, just this store display. And it's these two guys.
Is it a display or is it like a giant cube?
Well, it looks like it's a storefront. It looks like where you would put the mannequins for like a storefront.
Okay.
That's what it looks like to me.
For some reason, I was thinking
it's kind of like a
big,
town square type area.
Because all I remember is there's like a sheet thing, and like the kind of like a town, like everyone's walking around, kind of brick laid.
But to me, it looked because it's definitely closed in.
Maybe you're right.
It's definitely closed in because these two guys are hooked to this looks like a ping pong table
people can't get in.
with like a buzzsaw in the middle of it, and they can tug each other one way or the other.
Yeah.
We find out these two are romantic rivals for a girl named Dana, who is suspended above them, and we find out that Dana was dating one of the guys and cheated on the guy with the other guy who's in the trap. So they have to decide who's going to die and who's going to get her. Thankfully, the guys decide, fuck her, she's terrible, she cheated on both of us, and they decide to just let her die.
Yeah.
With the iconic line, in my opinion, he looks up and is like, Dana, I think we're breaking up with you. And like that guy just thought that was his fucking moment in the sun.
And they just leave it right up front.
Right, and they just let her die.
And I love that there's like this back and forth because one of them does like push really hard against the other and the guy gets like cut with the saw.
Yeah.
But then they realize how like awful she is, like the shit that she's saying, they're getting it in real time, and they're just like, we'll just keep the it right up. And
yeah, because she tries to play them against each other,
Yeah.
and thankfully they're not stupid. They're like, Are
so
you
all
fucking
these people
serious?
in public just doing their
Right, and
morning
this is all
shopping
going on
just
in
see a
public.
woman get bisected.
Right, it looks like a performance art piece, I guess is what they think it is, but it's not. It's a jigsaw trap. So,
No.
so back to Bobby, and Bobby and his crew, his wife, his manager, best friend guy, his lawyer, and his publicist all end up in saw traps because that's what the lesson he's going to learn. You're going to pretend you were part of a trap. Well, now you are in a trap. So, Bobby has to save. One of the girls has a fish hook down her throat.
I don't like this trap.
I fucking love the fish hook trap because
It makes me so uncomfortable. It's down her throat.
Yep.
And she's in a straitjacket. And
And
there's
since
this
she's this
big,
publicist, her thing is she talks.
Yeah, she talks.
She uses her
and
mouth
she has to shut
yep.
the fuck up for once, which he
Right.
actually says to her. But
Why
there's
can't you just shut the fuck up?
but there's like this big circle around her with these sharp. Think of it like if you look at a syringe and you have a little beveled edge needle with a hole, and it's like they're just going towards her neck. If she screams and the decibel goes too high on this machine, they move forward. So she has to be as quiet as she can while he's pulling a fish hook the wrong fucking way out of her throat.
Right.
And so obviously she gets impaled and he dies, and he's just like screaming at her again. Why
Right.
couldn't you just shut the fuck up?
Right.
So it was a big statement for her, obviously. But
Yeah.
that trap is one of the most uncomfortable for me.
The next lady he has to save is like his lawyer or something, and she basically because she saw things and didn't say anything about it, she's gonna get her eyes gouged out if he can't save her.
Yeah, they're all about bars moving into...
Right, because it's
into
3D. Remember,
Yeah.
it's 3D, so you had to see the shit coming at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I forget what it's so muddy. I forget what the fuck they had to do to save her, but eventually she dies. She gets the fucking things through her fucking eyes, and Bobby's just left there. Then he gets to his best friend.
And then the one you really like. Yeah, the best friend.
Oh, yeah, the best friend was the best one because he gets to him, and he's like, so, again, his best friend, they led each other astray, or one of them led the other astray. So now Bobby has to lead his best friend. His best friend is blindfolded, and he is walking on the floor. They're on the second story of this building, and
Yeah, it's like the exposed frame structure.
right. They have the exposed frame, but there's like boards that connect it. So Bobby has to lead his friend across, and as his friend has his neck is clearly attached to something, and if he
And he
drops,
only has
he'll hang.
like a certain time limit again.
Right. So Bobby has to tell his buddy to come across there, and his buddy has to follow his instruction, just like Bobby followed his.
Yeah.
So they get there, and he's like, walking across, and he's leading them, and you're like, oh my God, is he going to do it? And then no, he fucking doesn't do it. The best friend ends up dead too.
Yep.
And it comes down to his wife. And all you see, it's weird. He gets to his wife, and she's just chained up on like a platform. It's very, very BDSM the way she's just kind of like tied up and chained up.
It's a very bizarre.
Right, it's really fucked up. You don't really see what's going on. So, but Bobby, to save her, he has to do exactly what he lied about in his memoir. He's got to chain his chest, climb up the hooks, and suspend himself in midair.
And like connect two cords together to turn off or something.
Right, because that was what he said his trap was.
Yeah.
He literally did he
set his own trap.
All
He made
Hoffman
it
did
up.
was he did exactly what Bobby had laid out. So Bobby does it. He gets all the way to the top. He puts the fish hooks in his chest, and then he goes to do the cord, and all of a sudden it tears through his pectorals. He falls straight to the ground. It's fucking gruesome. And then his wife, for some reason, there's like this fucking thing, looks like the Batmobile from Batman Returns.
Well, I was
pops
just
up.
looking at it, and the site calls it the Brazen Bowl. And
Fucking
it's-
who? Yeah, sure.
I don't know, but you're right. These metal things pop up. It almost creates an oven, and then it just turns on.
And it cooks her.
It cooks her.
And she dies that way, and Bobby has to watch. So that's their trap, and really that's like the fucking end of it. Like we don't get any fucking closure in that. So all the while Hoffman, so Jill's being protected by this police officer. Hoffman catches up with him, kills the police officer protecting Jill, and then
there's other random traps and stuff all along while this other story is playing out.
It's a lot. And then so he's got Jill. He puts Jill in the reverse bear trap the same way she put him in the reverse bear trap. Only this time we see it work, and he kills Jill. And it looks like Hoffman's going to get away with all of this, except for we see him attacked by a bunch of people in pig masks. And one of the people takes off the pig mask to reveal himself to be none other than Dr. Lawrence Gordon. So Dr. Gordon kidnaps Hoffman. And where does Hoffman wake up? The shithole from the first movie, where Lawrence Gordon himself had to cut off his fucking leg. And Gordon, of course, it's 3D. Gordon stands there in the doorway the same way Jigsaw stood there and talked to Adam. And he says, "Game over." And as Hoffman is screaming, Gordon throws one of the hacksaws at Hoffman. And because 3D. It's in 3D, it flips towards the camera.
Yeah.
And that's when Gordon shuts the door on Hoffman, and that is the end of the Saw franchise, or so we thought.
Right.
Because 7 years later, after that, we get Jigsaw, which was directed by the Spierig brothers, and this is when a new team took over in writing and directing. This is kind of a new direction for the series. So you're like, how does this pick up? We have no mention of Dr. Gordon, for what it's worth. We have no mention of Detective Hoffman. What we do have is what is he? Is like a coroner? He's a forensic kind of medical doctor guy. His name's Logan. He has an assistant with him, a pretty assistant. And then there are cops who are trying to solve what looks like a new Jigsaw game, even though Jigsaw is dead. And he's been dead. So we still get this continued, right? Like all of this. But no Hoffman, no Gordon. We start off with Logan now, who is kind of our main character. He's trying to use the medical evidence and the forensic evidence to solve the crime. Meanwhile, the police don't really have an angle. There's a detective, and we get the sense that Logan and this cop have history, and there's some tension there. So, but they kind of coexist in the attempt to solve the crime, and they start to look at Logan's assistant. His assistant there in the lab, and we start to think that maybe it's her, and it turns out she does have some experience. Because she's familiar with the Jigsaw case. She actually is an owner of memorabilia, and like she's bought some stuff online, so it really incriminates her. It looks like she might be involved in this new game, and I'll get to the new game here in a second. So Logan, his assistant, this detective, they're all in this game of like nobody trusts one another, right? So that is their angle that's going on. Meanwhile, the game that they're trying to solve is these strangers wake up into a room with buckets on their head. That's how the game starts.
Yep.
One guy, literally, the game starts, it pulls him and fucking tears him up. There's like these blades, these razor blades. So the buckets on their head will drag them over to a wall. On the wall are these buzz saws, and these saws just tear up a motherfucker.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to this first guy. The rest of the people are able to get out of the trap and move on to the next level. All the while, this poor fucker.
I say it's like the guy, he doesn't like wake up through the whole game, and it just like drags him up the wall and cuts his ass.
Yep. So he gets cut up, and each time there's a new victim in this trap, they find the body, which is what the detectives and Logan and everybody are trying to solve. This is what they're working off of, these bodies that are appearing as the game happens. So the game happens, the people die, and they find the bodies, which is probably the first time this has happened. We're finding the bodies as the game's in progress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we see the game in progress, and we're finding bodies. So it's like, it's the first time we've really seen this. So the game keeps going. We see traps involving fucking what's the funnel thing?
I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's almost like it's like a blade tornado.
A blade tornado, yeah. It's like a fucking blade tornado. There's a trap where people end up, where one guy falls through a board, and his leg ends up in razor wire.
It's like the tension wires,
right?
Because it's like the way they get set off, they're so wound tight that they tighten around his leg to the point where it eventually cuts it off.
Right,
basically.
right. And then there are people who are in a silo that's filling with grain, and as the grain is filling up, there's also weapons dropping from the fucking sky.
That one's fucking scary because silos,
you get the sense of claustrophobia from it.
Well, right, but I remember, growing up in the Midwest, obviously we have a lot of farmland, and whenever I was younger, there was, there are accidents where people fall into silos, and because of the nature of what is usually in them, they don't make it out. So you get this
suffocating. Yeah,
this uncomfortable, terrifying thing. There's all this like cornmeal type shit dropping in, whatever it is, grain, and then there's like butcher knives and pitchforks and shit dropping.
Saw blades
Yeah.
for some reason.
And it's called the cycle trap, by the way, the other one.
Yeah, because it's the motorcycle.
Yeah, but there's like blades.
Yeah, it's really
a bizarre
fucking weird.
one.
And meanwhile, I think her name is Eleanor, Logan's assistant.
Yes.
Has a replica or like a prototype of it as part of the memorabilia that she's got.
Yeah, because she has different replicas.
And it looks really fucked up. It's all this stuff is incriminating against Eleanor. So this trap keeps going, and all these, as the deaths are happening, again, these bodies are turning up. And finally, we get to the end of the trap, or so we think, and Logan and this the cop, his adversary here, they end up together.
His name is Brad.
Fucking Brad. It's always Brad. So Brad and Logan end up in, we think the trap is over, but they end up in a room, and they're trapped in the room together. And also before this, we get a cameo from Tobin Bell as Jigsaw, because he presents the last two people in the trap with the same option in the room. Mm-hmm. And then Logan and Brad end up in the same trap, only without John Kramer there.
Right.
So then we find out, because John Kramer was at the end of this trap actually took place years ago while John was still alive. This is one of John's earliest traps.
It's like his first.
So we find out that this was all a flashback.
Yeah.
Well, why were we getting this flashback? Because we go back to the guy who first died in the trap, or so we thought. And that guy didn't actually die, but we find out it was Logan.
Yep.
And Logan, we learn, is a war veteran, and came back from war and didn't really have... Or no, this is before he went to war. Before he went to war, he was kind of down on his luck. He wasn't the best human being before he went to war. And he ended up not appreciating his life, and John put him in the trap. The trap drags him, cuts him up, but it doesn't kill him. John then takes him, nurses him back to health. And Logan goes into the military, becomes a medic, and we realize when he comes back, he starts helping John.
Yeah.
He helps John set up some of these traps, and after John dies, he takes up the mantle, has become one of the Jigsaw apprentices. The way we find this out is because at the end of the trap, Logan and Brad have these collars on their necks. Only not shotgun collars, they're fucking lasers.
Fucking lasers.
Fucking sharks with lasers on their heads. But no, they just have collars with lasers on. So Logan's goes off, and the lasers go down, and it looks like they've killed him, and he drops. So Brad's is about to go, and as it's about to go, we see Logan stand up and reveal all of this to Brad. And Brad's like, what the fuck, how are you still alive? And he's like, I set all this up. And he's like, what about the trap? He's like, that trap happened years ago. So we see Logan recreating the trap, recreating the bodies from the trap to bring Brad, to lure Brad into this trap of his own. And as the laser collar opens, it comes down and it slices Brad as he's discovering all this from Logan.
Yes.
And we see this beautiful petal of body parts just fall.
Yeah, it's like a head flower.
Right. It's like a Demogorgon, except the fucking the whole body splits open.
Honestly.
So Logan reveals that he was behind it the whole time.
Yeah.
And he was a Jigsaw apprentice, and he says the famous game over line.
Right.
And that was the twist, is that the game wasn't actually happening. It happened years ago with John.
It's one of those that's really beautifully done. Obviously, Saw is all about their plot twists.
Yep.
Some are weaker than others. I really liked this one.
I thought Jigsaw was a really good sequel, especially to revive the series after such a long hiatus.
Because, you have like a 10-year difference between what you're watching that's already happened and then the stuff that's happening now. So like everything that's happening in like this big like barn setting is all the old shit.
Yep.
And it does really good at melding the two together and not
because you think they're happening
a weird
concurrently.
generational gap.
Yeah, you think they're happening at the same time simultaneously, when really
it's just like random bodies with jigsaw pieces cut out or some shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, kind of like a copycat.
It's
again,
fascinating.
To bait this guy.
Yeah, it's terrific. So it's very well done. Then we were treated to 2021's Spiral, from the Book of Saw. And Spiral is the last movie to have been released up to this point until next year's Saw X. So Spiral, the story was written by Chris Rock, and I'll never forget when I first heard that Chris Rock came up with his own Saw movie. It was really fucked up. I was like, this has to be the Onion story.
Yeah,
it was
that's
not.
what I thought. No, because he had no relation. I personally never read anything about Chris Rock just going, hey, I really like Saw franchise. I would love to work on
Right.
that someday. So yeah, when it was announced, I was like, Chris Rock doing Spiral?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well,
yeah.
a new Saw movie. We didn't know the name right away, but I fucking love this movie.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. I felt like there was a bit more predictability with this.
It's not the most unique Saw movie. It's kind of
Right.
like a soft reboot, if you will. Like
Yeah.
it's like, and that's why I like that they said it's called Spiral from the Book of Saw.
Yeah.
It's not actually, it's not a direct Saw movie necessarily. It is in the same universe though, and we see ties
Yeah.
to John Kramer. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's a copycat killer. Only this time he's targeting the police.
Yes.
And it's terrific because Chris Rock's
It's
character
a
in the
hell
movie.
of a statement piece. This
It is.
movie.
It is a very big statement. Chris Rock's character is
A good cop.
he's as good as he can be, and his dad, played by Samuel L. Jackson, was also a cop, so he's got history on the force. But he's kind of experienced some shame, because of just some stuff that's happening within the department. There's some tension within the department with other officers.
Yeah.
So they start killing cops, and they're framed as Saw traps and Saw murders. So Chris Rock, his new partner, played by Max Minghella, are in pursuit of these people perpetrating these killings among cops. And it creates all sorts of dissension within the police. We see a lot of interesting traps, one of my favorites being the wax trap that is done to
Oh,
the
yeah,
captain of the
that's
force, played by
terrifying.
Marisol Nichols. She ends up in the trap. Chris Rock's character, Zeke, tries to save her. He can't. And she is...
Yeah.
It's one of the most gruesome deaths in the whole series. Zeke goes to find his dad, again played by Samuel L. Jackson. He cannot find him, and we find out that Zeke's dad has been kidnapped and is now in a Saw trap of his own.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, Chris Rock's character of Zeke, his partner, played by Max Minghella, they go and they find the Saw trap. And that's when we realize the twist to this one is that this kid, played by Max Minghella, who is following along the whole movie, is the one doing the traps and killing cops. Genius plot. I think Max Minghella plays his role to perfection. Samuel L. Jackson does a good job. Chris Rock does a great job. And in the end, Max Minghella's character gets away as Samuel L. Jackson's character falls victim to the final trap in the film.
Yeah. I like the way this one plays. You start off with the subway trap, which is really
Subway trap
fucking
is very well
scary. But you start to realize he's not just getting cops. He's also getting people who give tips to the cops.
Yeah, the informants, the
And,
rats.
Yeah, the rats. You have this guy who most people probably don't really care about, who dies by basically being suspended in front of a subway train.
Yep.
And has to either rip his own tongue out or he dies, and
Yep.
so he just
It's one
dies.
of the better traps too.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I really liked the traps in this movie. I felt like they were reasonable, but also some of them, like the subway one, is a little, how do you pull that off? But
There were a few of them that were a little, how do you pull them off? But yeah, it's it wasn't really. Again, it's becoming one of those series as it goes on. You kind of realize the deaths are a little bit more over the top than we've seen in the past, and it's yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think with this one, there was a little bit more. There's the one that just blasts glass at them. It's like a pressure thing.
Yeah.
At the end there.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of them, they're not as over the top. Even the traps themselves, I feel like they don't linger too long on the scenes.
They're a little more forgettable too in this one. This
little
isn't the
bit.
best traps
But I
by
feel
any
like
means.
it's
I like the
more
wax
story.
trap, like I mentioned, but
Yeah.
other than that, I feel like most of them were honestly a little kind of meh compared to some of the other traps we've
Yeah.
seen. But again, I mean, it was a very interesting take on the Saw franchise. I respect what they try to do here. Darren Lynn Bousman returned as director. Chris Rock again wrote the story, and the script was written by the same guys who were involved in Jigsaw, and written by the same guys who will be handling Saw X. And Saw X will also see the return of Kevin Gratuer, who directed, like we said, 6 and 7. So he's returning as well. So a lot of familiar faces in the 10th Saw movie, set to come out next year. And really, we've covered all the ground we can. We've covered every Saw movie. We've covered most of the traps that we enjoyed, most of the vital characters. The only other thing I think we want to touch upon is one of the things that is present in every movie that is one of our favorite aspects of each film, and that is the fact that John, since he doesn't obviously want to show himself, he has a puppet that he uses that is at the scene of each crime, whether he's just kind of sitting there and he's kind of in the background, or he pops up as a clue, or, as we've seen, he rides up on a fucking tricycle and just laughs that maniacal laugh at the
And
whoever
sometimes
survives.
he's even a bomb.
Sometimes he's even a bomb. And his name is Billy.
Billy the Puppet.
Billy the Puppet. And you'll see him. He's kind of iconic at
And the
this
only
point.
time he's changed is in Spiral. I don't remember the name exactly, but it's like a little pig thing.
Yes, it's a different spin on it.
And
But
I
of
think
course it's
it's-
called Spiral, and Billy on his cheeks has the spiral.
The little spirals,
Right.
yeah.
The spiral that the movie is named after are what we see on Billy's cheeks.
Which they even I think it's Jigsaw. Yeah, the Jigsaw cover, Tobin Bell's the cover, and his face is painted white with the little spirals
Right,
on his
exactly.
cheek.
It's painted like Billy.
Yeah.
So yeah, Billy the Puppet, he's not really necessarily the most important part of each movie, but he's one of our favorite parts. It looks like NECA is getting ready to release a Billy the Puppet
so
figurine, and
excited.
we're really pumped.
That is one thing I wanted to drop $400 on is I think it's Trick or Treat Studios maybe, who makes a lot of the puppets and the dolls. I know they have some Chuckies, but they have an Annabelle. They have Billy for Saw, and they also have the Billy doll for Dead Silence.
Yeah, and again, Dead Silence, we talked about it in the beginning. We're going to get into
Which
that
Billy
at
the
some point.
Puppet's also
Right,
cameoed
the-
in Dead Silence.
Yes, he is, but yeah, they named the puppet. They named the puppet in Dead Silence Billy, just
Yeah.
like the puppet in the Saw movie. So
Yep.
nice ode to their OG creation there.
Exactly.
So there you have it. It started back in 2003 with a short film by two Aussies, and developed into a worldwide phenomenon franchise that spawned countless sequels. There has been games. There have been
I was gonna say there's games. There's
graphic
been
novels.
There's been amusement park.
Theme park rides. Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
been,
Saw the Ride. That's
Saw
right.
the Ride. There was an escape room for Saw
Yeah,
that was actually here
yeah.
a few years ago. They've had Universal, the Halloween Horror Nights. There's been Saw stuff. Obviously, it gave us one of the best fucking scores of all time because that Saw theme is iconic.
Yeah, Charlie Clouser,
Yeah.
composer for the first movie or two,
Yeah.
developed that song originally called Hello Zep,
Hello Zep.
because it plays as as Adam plays
It's
Zep's
the
tape.
climax music.
Yes,
yeah.
it is, and it becomes the song that they play at the end of every Saw movie. As you know, you're about to get the answers
Yeah.
to what the fuck just happened.
Exactly.
So that is our breakdown of the Saw franchise. We hope you enjoyed it. We had fun. We
Yeah.
hope you had fun. These are some of the most fun movies, and if you have not seen any of these movies that we just talked about,
Well, fuck, we spoiled it all.
We spoiled it all, but go watch them. It's 9 movies, but it's like they're a
It's
treat.
a
They're
lot
all
of
a treat.
characters, a lot of traps,
Yeah.
a lot of stuff to dig in that we could probably sit and talk for an hour for each movie.
Yeah.
So trust us, even
The
if
fact that
you're
we're
getting
able to
some
condense it down to
spoilers-
2 hours is a miracle.
Exactly. So there we go.
Yep, thank you. And we will leave you with this note. What's your name?
My name is very fucking confused.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every weekend. Follow us on TikTok at HorrorZoidPod and send emails to horrorzoidpod@gmail.com with your thoughts, questions, and stories for us to read on a future episode. To all our Zoids out there, stay scary.